how to research UN member states' positions on certain topics, on certain events. This is a question we get a lot at the reference desk in the library. So this is what I'm going to talk about in the next roughly 45 minutes. First is, how do member states express their positions? What options do they have? And then we're going to search for the documentation that contains this information. And we will search for documents, we will search for statements, and we will search for voting data in the UN Digital Library. And in the end, I will give you a brief overview of some other useful resources for your research. So, member states have a variety of options of how they can express their positions. First, they can initiate or table or co-sponsor a draft resolution. So they can introduce a draft resolution. The second is they can send a communication to the United Nations. This can be a letter, this can be a note verbal. What's important to notice is when a letter is sent to the UN, it has to be expressed in the letter that the sender wants it to become a UN document. Otherwise, we will not be able to find it in our databases. The third option they have is they can make a statement at a meeting of a UN organ. And last, they can vote on a draft resolution. And they also have the option to explain their vote, which again would be a statement. All these options find themselves in documents which we can search for. And for this, we will use the UN Digital Library. It's important to know that the UN Digital Library contains the written and official documentation of the United Nations. A lot of negotiations are going on behind the scenes, but the Digital Library does not contain any behind the scenes documentation. It's the official documents that have document symbols, and we are now adding more and more UN publications to the database. So the UN Digital Library, you might be familiar with it. Maybe you have already attended one of our introductory trainings. So the UN Digital Library is a one access point for all things UN. It contains UN documents and publications. We have something we call specialized collections that contain voting information and speech records. We will come to this later. And to other options which are not relevant for this training, but you can find maps in the Digital Library and something that is called the UN Oral History. That was a project some years ago where interviews with UN officials were conducted. So this is the type of material you can find in the UN Digital Library. And I'm coming now to the time frame that it covers. So from 1993 onwards, UN documents were produced digitally, not in paper form anymore. So you will find all documents from 1993 onwards, you will find them online. Older documents have been scanned and uploaded, and we had projects where we scanned and uploaded certain types of documents. So what you will definitely find are all resolutions from 46 onwards, Security Council plenary documents, meeting records of the plenary meetings of the General Assembly, and the supplements to the General Assembly official records. But we do not only have these projects where we look at certain types of documents, we also do ad hoc digitization, and we have been doing so for more than 20 years, so there's a lot more you can find in there. So if you find a record in the UN Digital Library and there's not a PDF file attached, you can reach out to us and ask for its digitization. And many people have done this, so a lot is that has not been systematically digitized, but a lot is available. So, and if it is not, but there's a record, we should have it, and you can reach out to us. Let's jump right into the database and start looking for documents. We will first look for documents, which means we are looking mainly for draft resolutions and letters. So this is the landing page of the digital library. So, and I'm going to, so that what you see here, this is the simple search, there's just a search bar, as you also know from Google, but I'm going to choose the advanced search down here. Although it's called advanced and not simple, it's simpler in some regards because it gives you options to search from drop-down lists and to search in specific fields. So the advanced search gives you options to search very specifically without having to know a certain search syntax. So, for example, you can search for an author, and I'm looking, so my sample country is Sweden. So I'm looking for documents authored by Sweden on climate. So I can leave this at any field here. I do a search. So I have 78 records. I have this. So the first thing, so you have your 78 records now. So the first thing I recommend to do is click on this little options button here and click on year descending, because this will give you the most recent document first. And from our experience, this is what people usually search for. They want the latest information first. So let's look at one of the records. This is the first one, because I also want to show you how the data is organized when I talk about these fields that were available in the drop-down list in the search. These are the fields. We have a field for the symbol, the document symbol. I might be familiar with that from our introductory trainings. We have a title of the document. We have, in this case, we have the resolution, because here we have a draft resolution. So we have related documentation here. We have a link to the resolution. And here we have the authors of this document, which in this case, as we have a draft resolutions, are the co-sponsors. So the co-sponsors appear as authors in the digital library. And that's why you can search for draft resolutions that have been sponsored by a specific member state. So I just click back to go back to the search. So on the left, you have facets, which give you the option to filter your results. So you can say, I just want to look at draft resolutions. You click this. Then you get all these draft resolutions. We've seen this before. Once again, you have all the sponsors in the title, but you also have all the sponsors down here in the author field, and Sweden is one of them. We have Sweden here. Yeah. So the other type of document that can be authored by a specific member state is a letter or a note verbal. And here we have a few letters authored by Sweden on the topic. We already see it here in the title. So let's go back to the original search. So I had 78 records. So sometimes you're looking for something very broad and you have a huge results list, like too much to handle. And sometimes you're looking for something very, very specific and you're not finding anything. And I want to show you just a a few tricks how you can play around with searches in the UN Digital Library. So let's say you have too much. We are searching, what this means, any field means it's like the system is searching the whole description of the document, which we have just seen. It's searching in every field. But we can limit this down and say, look for climate in the subject. So the subjects are something that are assigned by my colleagues in the indexing unit. They are assigned to the documents. So if a subject is assigned to it, the document should really be about this topic. Here, I chose another document now. This is how I expected it to be. Here, I have the word climate in the subject. So it's climate change in this case. So the subject search is one way to limit your search, but you can also broaden your search. And for this, you could choose full text. When you're searching, so what the system does by default and is it searches the description of the documents. When you search full text, the system searches within the documents. So this should give you a much broader results list. But you have to bear in mind that the word you're searching for might appear in the document, but the document might not really be about this topic. It's just mentioned, but it can also be an interesting paragraph, an interesting sentence, so that might be useful. But it gives you an option to broaden your search. So here, when I search the full text now, that goes back to more than 500 records then. So we have a broader list. Another way to make your search broader is to search for the root of a word and add a little star, because this is not the best example for this, but this climate with a star would also find climatic, for example. So if we search this, I'm expecting to get more, and I'm finding almost 750. So this is a bit more. This was not the best example, as I said, but this can be, this little star can make a difference. For example, if I'm searching for documents authored by Syria, search, I get 106 hits. If I add a little star to Syria, I get more than 8,000. And this is due to the fact that Syria is not the official name of the member state. The official name is the Syrian Arab Republic, as we can see here, Syrian Arab Republic. And this star ensures that I find all the variations of the word, that I also find the ending Syrian. Whereas with Syria, I do not make sure that I find all this. When I go back to this search, you can see here that it finds Syria because the term Syria appears, in this case, related to the function of this person. So it can be that Syria is in the record, so it captures it, but Syria star also captures the Syrian Arab Republic and makes a big difference for the search in this case. And the same applies to Russia, or the Russian Federation, as the member state is officially called. So this is our little star. Let's go back to Sweden. Sometimes you're not always looking for one specific word, but you have a phrase like climate mitigation. So if I leave it at that, I'm searching for all of the words. I can leave it at the full text. So what the system would do now, it searches for documents that contain the words climate and mitigation, but not necessarily in that order. Climate could be on page 2, mitigation could be on page 4. So I have 91 records here. If I want the phrase, or if I want the words to appear together as a phrase, I have to choose partial phrase from this dropdown. Don't use exact phrase. That might work, but might not. So, but partial phrase is a safer bet in this case. So, but I expect that I have less results now because it will appear less often as a phrase. So I have 7 results here when I search for climate mitigation. You could also choose any of the words. Then the system would search for documents that either contain both words or one or the other. So that should give us the broadest results list. And here we have 609 results. So this is just to show you how you can play around with the searches.
There's a question, which is an excellent question in the chat, which is for cases like Russia. If I search for Russian Federation in author, will the system also retrieve results with the Soviet Union?
Yes.
So I said, like name changes are complicated. And so, in some cases, well, I'll let you explain.
Yeah, but maybe you're a better one to explain as you have worked in indexing, because this is a matter of indexing and combining.
I think the short answer is it's better to search for all the names that you know. So if you're looking for USSR, look for the USSR or look for the Russian Federation. I think those would be better names, and you'll have to use the official name as it was at the time. So if you run into trouble, doing historic research, best to contact us.
Yeah.
But name changes can be complicated.
Yeah, I mean,
and we don't have clear practices. Indexing practices have varied over the years, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah. So if you want to make sure you really capture everything, search with all the variations or different names you have. We try our best to make everything accessible and to also capture older names, but to make sure use all the terms that are involved. As I was saying, play around with your search. Look at the subjects. I mean, it's not only playing around with the fields and the drop-down list, but also play around, and that the question fits excellently. Play around with the keywords, play around with the names. Maybe look at the records, what subjects were assigned, because UN language can be very specific and maybe different from the language we use in our day-to-day lives. So it's always good to try variations to capture everything. So let me go back to the PowerPoint to see if I captured everything. So we have the options button to sort. We have the facets to narrow your search. Here you can search by type of document, as I've shown, but you could also narrow down by UN body and by year. Statements. So speeches, statements are another way for UN member states to express their positions. Statements are given in meetings of UN bodies, and they are captured in meeting records. And you can search for these meeting records. But the UN Digital Library also offers an additional way to search. because we have indexed the individual speeches, which means you cannot just search for the document, but you can search for speakers that are within this document, which means that additional descriptive records are produced for each speech, which gives you an additional access point, an additional way to search. But it's quite a bit of work to look at all the documents, to look at all the speakers and speeches that are contained. So this is where we are currently. So the digital library currently provides access to individual speech records of the General Assembly from 83 onwards, from 64 onwards for the Security Council, and we are complete with the Economic Council from 64 onwards. You can find them in here. If you're doing historical research, there's something called the Index to Proceedings. I will not go into detail here because that cannot be done in 45 minutes then. But this is a bibliographic guide that contains all this information, but this is not as comfortable as the digital library. It used to be a print publication. But if you're doing historical research, you need it, you have problems with it, please reach out to us. But a lot can be done in the digital library. And again, I'm going back to the database. So I go back to the landing page. I always do it by clicking on the UN emblem. Making it a bit larger again. And now in this white box here, you can click on speeches and get to our speeches database. Again, you have a simple search, or you can choose the advanced search. And you can now see that the fields have changed because the description for the simple single speeches has changed. So a bit less descriptive work goes into the speeches than it goes into the whole documents. So let's say our new member state we are looking for is Mexico. And from the drop-down list, I search for country organization. You can also search for speaker, but speaker asks for the name of an individual. So you can search for individual speeches with a speaker if you're searching for a name. But for a country, choose country organization. Let's see what representatives of Mexico were saying about peacekeeping. I can keep this at any field here because I do not have a lot of fields. It's often not really necessary to choose. We don't have the subjects here, but we have the agenda. But this, if I keep it at any field, it will also search the agenda. So it's not really necessary to limit this down. Mexico, peacekeeping. So we have 88 records again. I want the latest first, so I click on options, choose year descending. Here I can choose if I want speeches from the General Assembly or the Security Council. Here, country organization, I see Mexico. So these are representatives of Mexico. But down here, you see rapporteurs and other president, you have other functions. So if representatives of Mexico were holding these functions, this might appear here. But I'm choosing Mexico. And these are my speeches. So I'm going for the first one. So this is a speech in the Security Council. I can see this from the document symbol that has an S, which tells me this is a Security Council document. So, okay, I want to see this speech by Mr. Fuente. This is the description. You see there's less information than there was for the documents. but the speech is not there yet. And this is what throws people off often. So the speech is still contained in the document, in the meeting record. So you will have to open the meeting record to get to the actual speech. It's not a separate file. So down here in the description, you have the meeting record and a link to this document. But when you click on this, it doesn't open directly because you will get the description of the meeting record. But here you can either download it or you scroll down to the preview. And there you can select the language you're most familiar or most comfortable with. And there you have it. And then you do a search for the name. And there we have him down here as the member, and there we have the actual speech. So this is often a bit confusing. So we have this additional way of searching, but still the speech itself is contained in the meeting record. It's just another way of accessing the meeting record and to give you a more targeted search option. So last but not least is voting data. So this is something we get asked for a lot, is how member states vote on certain draft resolutions. So the digital library contains a voting data collection. And here you will find the voting data for all resolutions that were adopted in the General Assembly and in the Security Council. You can search by keyword or you can search by document symbol. Unfortunately, you cannot search by country. And when searching for voting data, please bear in mind that many resolutions are adopted without a vote. So let's go back into the database. Okay, here our chat pops up. I do not want this currently, but you're happy to use it. So we have this chat service and this little widget that pops up when you're doing research in the digital library. So please use it if you need it. Okay, we are on the landing page, and next to the speeches, we have voting data. So if you click on this, get what was my example here? That was, so now again, I have the option simple search or advanced search, but here it does not really make a lot of difference because I do not have a lot of fields here. So here I tend to stay in the simple search, but I could also do advanced, but just to show you, if I'm searching for a phrase in the simple search, I do use quotation marks as I do in Google to look for the phrase, which is international security in that case. Let's see, as I said, it's not possible to search by country, but I can search for a topic, look at the resolutions they are, and then look how the member states voted. So again, I want the latest on top. Again, you can limit down by UN body, General Assembly or Security Council. And here you can see there are the resolutions that were adopted with a vote and those that were adopted without a vote. And those I'm not really interested in because I do not see a breakdown by member states. So I'm going to choose vote. Here, I'm going to choose General Assembly. And here I have the latest adopted resolution on this topic. Here I can see a voting summary. I can see that 104 member states voted yes, 53 voted no, 7 abstained, and 29 did not vote at all. So, but I'm interested in how the individual member states voted. So here I have the description, I have the title, the agenda, and what's really nice here that I have all the related documentation, which is linked. I have the resolution, I have the meeting record. This link is not active yet because the meeting record has not yet been issued. Once it's published, it will be an active link and you can directly access it here. I have a draft resolution and I have the committee report that contains this draft resolution. Again, the voting summary, and here I have the breakdown of the votes by member states. So if you see a Y, the country voted yes. If there's an N, it voted no. If there's an A, like here for Chile, the country abstained. And if there's nothing, like Afghanistan, the country didn't vote at all.
There have been a couple of questions in the chat, not so much about the voting, but just to go back, I'm not sure I understand exactly. Somebody asked, at the presentation's beginning, you mentioned that a letter sender must indicate they want the letter to be a UN document.
Mm-hmm.
If a sender does not indicate they want their communication to be a document, how can we see these communications? And I replied, I think they should be held by the UN archives. You know, that's a separate service, right? But then they replied, so countries can participate in floor dialogue, but their participation is not part of the public record. So this is where I think there might just be a little confusion between the types of documents. But maybe we'll get, there's somebody's just replied. Let me see.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the.
So then I think that maybe we'll handle that separately because I think that might be a separate question. The next question is, can you show how to find co-sponsorships, which is a little bit different from voting. And I know we're running short on time, so I don't know.
Okay, now I can briefly go back. So,
and then there's one section, now there is another question here about voting. Notice voting records consider that all the full membership, but not all members have voting at the specific moment. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is something that used to be recorded. It used to be recorded historically, but we don't record that information anymore because it doesn't come to us automatically from the General Assembly voting information. So we take what is given to us. That's the short answer. If you want to do research on who's not allowed to vote, that's a separate type of research. And I'll look at the rest of this. And if you can talk about co-sponsorship, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Co-sponsorship. Yeah, we had it in the beginning when we were looking for letters and draft resolutions. Let's quickly go back. So I go to the advanced search. So let's go back to Sweden with W. So if I want to find draft resolutions that were co-sponsored by a specific member state, this is the way I would search. So I choose Sweden. That was my example as an author. And I search for this. And then I choose draft resolutions. So the information about sponsorship and co-sponsorship is included in the draft resolutions. So this is the type of document you are looking for when you want to find sponsorship information. Yeah, we go here to the sponsors. Let's see, this is something that was only sponsored by Sweden, but we have seen in the examples in the beginning, all the sponsors would appear here under authors. As sponsors can add their names later, there might be an addendum to the draft resolution. that contains the additional sponsors, or you will find a field in the description in the digital library, because the procedure has just recently changed. So we add the names of the additional sponsors in a note or under the author field. But this is how you would find sponsorship information. Or if you're doing historical research, like for every session, a compilation, an annual compilation of resolution and decisions is issued. And this compilation contains resolution and decision text, but also sponsorship and voting information. So if you want it all in one place, that would be another publication you could look at. So we were searching for voting. Okay, we have almost reached the end. I just give you a very brief overview of some resources. So we have a website which is called UN Member States on the Record. And this will give you information. You can search for a specific member state. I can just show it. That's easier. So it takes a bit to load, as this is all Power BI powered now to have nice visualizations. But you can just search for your member state here. Say I'm interested in Kenya. And then I get the information when the country became a member state, and I have links to the relevant resolutions in this case. I get information of when the country was a member of the Economic and Social Council, of the Security Council, of the Human Rights Council. And here on the record, you can find very useful links. So for example, if you're looking for draft resolutions sponsored by Kenya, you can click on this link, and this will be this will give you a predefined search, and this is just the search we have been doing with Sweden. But this is just, again, another entryway, more comfortable. If you're looking for a specific topic here, you will just have to enter or to add your keyword to this search. So here we try to collect like everything member state related into one page. So this is a useful resource when doing research regarding member states. So the next thing is the UN meetings coverage and press releases website. This is not a UN library website, but if sometimes a meeting takes place and you want immediate information, but it takes a while for the official documentation to be issued, this can take weeks or sometimes months, depending on the body. But if you want immediate information, so the first place to go to is the press releases website, because they have often very detailed information on meetings. Sometimes the press releases contain speeches, resolution texts, and they contain voting results. These can be just a summary, and this can be pretty detailed. So use this until the official records are out, but bear in mind that press releases are not official records. They are authoritative, but they are not official documentation. The press releases are available from 95 onwards on the press releases website, and we in the library have older print copies of what was before, and we are working on adding them to the digital library. First, just as descriptive records, so you can find them and you know we have print in the library. If you need this, let us know. The UN Journal, that gives you an overview of what's going on at the UN, which meetings are taking place, where they're taking place, which documents are issued. And the journal contains something very useful, which is called e-statements. Again, another thing that's immediately accessible until the official documentation comes out. So if we go to the UN Journal, down here we have a Economic and Social Council meeting. And here you have this little icon with the E. And there you will find e-statements. So these statements have been submitted by the member states. So they are not official UN documentation, and they are not issued in the 6 official UN languages. They are just issued in the languages that the member state submit. So, but again, and sometimes, so this is the speech they submit. It's not always the same as it is delivered. That will be in the official documentation. But again, this is information that is often immediately accessible after a meeting. And very useful for finding member states' positions on something. So some more online resources. If you are looking for information on the committee level, they have their own websites where they also keep their documentation. So if you're looking for voting information on the committee level, I recommend to go to the committee's website. And the next 2 things are library products, the research guides, and our FAQ database SDAG. Here you will find a wealth of information about UN documentation and other things UN. Just check out the website and browse and see what we can offer there. And down here is a link to a YouTube tutorial about the same topic we covered today, but just in a very compressed form. It's like 6 or 7 minutes. So if you want a little refresher, I can highly recommend to have a cup of coffee and watch this little YouTube video. And with this, we have reached the end of the presentation. And yes, I would like to invite you to reach out to us. You can email us. We have a contact form on our website. You can use the chat, or you can just come in. We are very approachable, and we are there to help you with your research. So thank you very much for attending. So have a good day, everyone.